Hello and welcome to Emsi Webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great topic, very interesting topic today of LMI and skills for course design. We have Richard Hewitt with us, who is the UK Director of Higher Education for Lightcast, as we are now. If you have any questions, please put them in the questions box on the control panel and we will endeavour to get back to those at the end of the presentation. If not, we will hopefully follow up in an email. You will get the slides and the recording of today's presentation as a follow-up email, so please keep your eyes open for that. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Richard. Hi, Richard.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And just turned my webcam on. Hopefully people can see me as well without taking the slides off the screen. So let's hope that is all working just fine. But Debbie, let me know if there's any issues there. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming along today, and nice to see some familiar names and some new names as well. And so hopefully for some of you, there will be some new things or new way of thinking about things, and for others, there'll be some things that we've talked about before, but perhaps a slightly different way of looking at it. Because we're going to look at some new elements of data that I haven't really spoken about before in any great depth because they were in development, but we can have a look. But first of all, welcome to my first in-house webinar representing Lightcast. And as I think most of you will know, that until a few weeks ago, we were Emsi Burning Glass, and last year we were two separate competing companies, Emsi and Burning Glass Technologies. Well, now we're in this new era. We're more than the sum of our parts. We're illuminating the world of work and the labor market. We're casting light through data. The fun we can have with our new name. But what I will say now is do send a quick note to your IT managers asking them to whitelist emails and messages from lightcast.io because you need to make, if that domain needs to be allowed by your web servers in order for you to keep receiving our updates, reports, messages about webinars, and all of that sort of thing. So if you don't want those being filtered out and blocked, do get lightcast.io whitelisted. Anyway, what I am talking about today is really how, in particular, skills data analytics can inform what is delivered in a classroom or lecture hall. And do note that I said inform. This isn't about suggesting this is some amazing solution that supplants, replaces, or even corrects what is happening already. That's not what this is about. I'm starting from the assumption that your academics know their stuff pedagogically and from a domain expertise perspective. So it's not trying to say that this is somehow should replace what they do. That isn't what this is. I'm not trying to make that case, and wouldn't dream of it. But particularly as a former senior lecturer myself. But if that's the case, you know, if our academics know what they're doing, then why bother? I mean, why not just leave what is delivered to the teachers and what is taught to the teachers and what is lectured to the lecturers? And certainly with a number of institutions, that is very much still the approach that is there. That's the very traditional thing. We'll leave that to our experts, and not want to go down that route of asking too many questions. But why bother? And so I would pose the question: what is it that drives students to come to your institution? Is it reputation and prestige, the social esteem that can be derived from having a degree from your university? Is it because they are passionate about their subject area and really want to dive into it as deeply as they can before they go into the wider world of work? Is it because their parents said they had to? Is it because that's what's being recommended by their advisors at school? And of course, you can have students with all of those drivers. And of course, as well as those, but also alongside those drivers, you will have students who have chosen to go into higher education because they believe it will help them have a better or a more fulfilling or maybe a more highly paid career afterwards. And certainly we do hear from youth research groups that career outcomes is an element of student decision making that's been growing. And we hear it this side of the pond, and we certainly hear it the other side of the pond. And it's more mature there, particularly because of the return on investment question and student debt or perceived debt, and thinking about how that's dealt with. So of course that is an element. But let's frame it in another way. Let's ask the question: what proportion of students think that their degree won't prepare them for professional employment? Have you asked them that? So I'll hazard a guess. I haven't done the research, but I'd hazard a guess and presume it's quite a small proportion. But let's take it a bit further. How do your students feel their study with you will prepare them for professional employment? So how do they think that's going to be done? What is it about their study that will get them ready for the workplace? Let's flip it again. What about employers? How do they think a degree with your institution prepares the new supply of graduate workforce for a position in their business? So it's just worth sometimes thinking about these things in a slightly different way and thinking about, well, what do people expect? What do key stakeholders expect? And let me just check something. Debbie, just let me know if it's a problem having my webcam on, because I don't know if when I show the next slides with a bit more content on, whether or not my face is going to be on top of the content. So let me know, and if it's an issue, I'll switch off the webcam. So universities, as you all know, because you'll have this in some shape or form, they tend to have a graduate attributes framework that is either integrated into degrees or wrapped around them. There might be 6, 9, 12 themes depending on the institution, but that you aim to be intentional in developing in your students. And think about that employer question, and from an employer's perspective, those expectations are likely to overlap with what these are. And so I've thrown up some suggestions on this slide as to what they might be, and I'm sure there's probably overlap with what your institutions themselves look to do. Now, some of these might be kind of inferred, like if we take cognitive ability. So if you have a degree, then that provides evidence of cognitive ability, being able to achieve that, and you've been through a kind of filtering process in order to be accepted onto a degree and to pass each module and each year and to move forward and get your reward at the end. Does the employer need to test that independently? Well, of course, we do know that some employers do. Take domain expertise. If you have a degree in pharmacology, then you should know something about gastroenterology. So again, it's something that may be inferred. Let's have a look at some of these other ones. Tenacity and resilience, particularly important, for example, if you work in sales and business development roles. As an aside, really, if you look at LMI, so traditional kind of labor market data, and count the number of jobs, this is a huge area of professional level employment. There aren't that many specific higher education pathways into it. And I'll just make a point here, as marketing courses absolutely do not count. It's very, very different from sales and business development, very different domain. So anyway, that's a whole other conversation, and certainly there's a conversation around that about student demand and employer demand. Funnily enough, that's where marketing does come into it, to think about how you can make that link between where there's a job market and where students can have success, but how do you make them aware of that and generate that demand and make that market? Of course, there's a lot of marketing and marketing theory that comes into that, but that is another topic, and I won't go any further into it today. Let's take another one, reliability. So employers need their workers to turn up. They need to be able to trust them if they're working remotely. Outputs rather than presenteeism is of course the order of the day. If we assign this person a task, is it going to get done? Are they going to meet their deadlines? So all of that kind of thing. So no surprises in my mentioning communication skills. I think of course that encompasses all manner of things, from being able to speak up in a meeting, make a business case, write a proposal for a client. So it covers quite a range of different types of skills within that. Digital fluency, and you could call this all sorts of different things, but how much training will graduates going, from an employer's perspective, how much training will incoming graduate finance assistants need to become proficient users of your accounting software? Does your incoming graduate sales rep understand how to get around a CRM platform like Salesforce and understand why it's essential to their success? Does your new marketing assistant know how to maximize the analytics available from social media platforms? All of these kinds of things. Relevant experience, of course. Have these people done it before? Either for real or at least simulated. So yeah, do they understand it? Have they done it? Have they got the experience? So all of these kinds of things. And so we know universities already thinking about this in terms of their employability interventions and where they fit in, but also these are the kind of things that employers have in terms of expectations. And I imagine if you think about student expectations as well, there's going to be overlap with this too. So where do we come in, and where's our data come in? So from our perspective as Lightcast, these are all areas of value to employers. And we aim to capture as much of that as is articulated by employers when they recruit and place a job advertisement on their company's website or on a jobs board. Collect as much of that as possible. We collect these raw job postings from this huge range of sources. We process them with natural language processing algorithms, which we've developed over more than 2 decades of doing this. We deduplicate those raw postings, we classify them according to all sorts of different variables, and all this allows us to make sense of what is basically a whole load of unstructured big data, and we structure it to make sense of it. So when it comes to these requirements we're looking at, these aspects of value, we capture those from the complete job posting. So that, from all of it, the body and everything, and we match them. So there's a classification process against our open skills taxonomy. So this is open source and dynamic library of terms that we see from the raw data as having value to employers. Now, we call them skills, but they really cover pretty much all of the items that we've kind of got listed here. It encompasses all of that. So you can learn more about the taxonomy and what it looks like on this link, and you'll get a copy of this, the slides afterwards. But one of the key elements to bear in mind about this is it's, as I said, it's dynamic. Now what that means is it's updated every 2 weeks. And that really does reflect the fast pace of change in technologies in particular. And it's also more than the library of terms. So when I've spoken about this in previous webinars, it has been a library, a flat list of terms. Now it's a taxonomy. It's one of the benefits of merging companies and bringing things together and creating something that is greater than the sum of its parts. So now we also have a real taxonomy. There are categories and subcategories. Those themselves are informed by how skills cluster together in the data from the labour market. One of my colleagues who works on this taxonomy said to me that it helps to think about the data we can see expressed in these skills terms as being the pain points for employers. Because why are they using them? Well, they're saying, what do they really need? What's essential that they don't have? What's the gap that they need to fill in their business? So, we talk about skills gaps and big skills gaps, but if these things are being said, look, we require these, we need these, it's because there's a gap to fill in the business. And so if we can see those in aggregate, saying lots of employers saying they need this, it means their businesses have a space to fill with this skill or attribute or competency, however you want to term it. We say skill. So as I mentioned previously, universities, often focus on 6, 12, 18 or whatever, or so of these employability competencies that encompass the key attributes that employers want. And what this taxonomy allows us to do is look under the bonnet and see far more specifically what employers' pain points are and the trends around them. It's more specific because we're not just looking at 6 or 12 generic items. There are over 30,000 terms in this library, and this library, as I said, is determined by what's in the raw data. This isn't something that we've taken a pedagogical framework and applied it. We've taken the raw data and seen, okay, what are people actually talking about, and it's a bottom-up design that keeps changing. So from within that, we've got 32 categories and over 400 subcategories. Again, as I said, driven by where we see the clustering in the data. It's not a pedagogical framework, and it doesn't try to be. It's looking at where clusters are. And the specificity then enables providers, you guys, to make judgments as to how best to address these when it comes to course design and delivery and all the other interventions that you might have. So of course, that in terms of the data and how we deal with it, it is complicated. It sounds complicated, and it is complicated, but we deal with the complexity at our end, and that enables you to extract the insight you need really easily to take action. So in practice, what does that actually look like? And so what I wanted to do was just show you some of the data that's now available that utilizes the taxonomy and the kind of data that you could be able to see and then take forward. So what I first have to do is think, well, what's my input, because it's all well and good to say, well, let's look at the labor market and see what's in demand, but what are you going to query? And that is a harder question actually to ask if you don't know what your starting point, you're not familiar with using data. And so there are all sorts of different ways of doing this that I've talked about in other webinars. So, extracting skills data that's articulated in your course descriptions from which we can do with our SkillSync tool, or I've talked about our mapping between subject area codes or subject areas and occupations. Just a note on that, I've seen it in our development tools. It's almost ready for release, but we're moving across from JAX to the common aggregation hierarchy with our mapping that's based on graduate outcomes research and labor force survey profiling research, combining that to give us a sense of the connectivity between subject areas and destination occupations. But there is another route which is a new route in our data as well, which is using another taxonomy. It's our global occupations taxonomy. It kind of sits somewhere between those standard occupational classifications, the SOC codes that you see in your graduate outcomes data, which are quite high level, and then job titles and skills. So it sits in between that, and we've launched it in our data, and you have career areas and occupations, and we will have a layer below that, specialized occupations, being launched in our UK data later this year. But it's quite useful taxonomy because it groups jobs in meaningful clusters that kind of reflect the labor market as it is now, and a bit like our skills. It's something that reflects what is in the modern labor market. It's not something that needs to be updated, like SOC every decade or so, and it kind of falls behind. So it's a very usable career area, so a usable taxonomy. So as an input for what I'm going to show you, I selected to use finance as a career area. So it groups together a whole range of jobs in finance and applies that to create a sample of job postings. And I decided to look at an aggregation of the past 3 years of job postings in the finance area. So let's have a look first of all at what we can see. And so here we are looking at the top level. And so I should also say we're looking at job postings in London, just because I thought it'd be interesting to have charts that would have that national average as a comparator against the region. All of the data could go all the way down to local authority level. I've chosen a government office region, London, for these purposes. And so we're using the categories, and so we can see it's quite top line, but already these categories are more detailed than what we might see at a general competency type framework. So we can see those groupings coming through, and unsurprisingly, finance and business are coming through. Physical and inherent abilities, I'd imagine it's more the inherent than the physical, which are clustering alongside those. And IT skills, very, very high up there too. Interesting language skills also surfacing there for these kind of finance jobs in London. I was digging down into the data, and actually it's quite a bit of Russian, Swedish, and Swedish in the past year kind of been focused. So that's quite interesting. But So you can get a sense of the types of things that are coming through. Healthcare is on there because of so many jobs being in the NHS. So that's why, you know, knowledge of healthcare and how it operates and that sector. So that's why that is showing up. So we can get a sense of broad areas where skills are clustered. If we then dig down a bit further, this is at subcategory level, and so we can see what's coming through there, and we think about those inherent skills that I mentioned before. Well, there we can see actually communication, initiative, and leadership, personal attributes. They're quite highly ranked, and so those would have come out of that category. And if you want to explore the categories further, that link I showed before, skills.lightcast.io, that gives you the ability to have a look through those. But we can see those subcategories really coming through there, and what's of importance in London. We can still go further. So this is looking at the skills item level. So here we're looking at not just of all the skills. Here we're looking at skills item level, but we're just looking at the specialized skills. So hard skills, really, domain expertise. And so we can see what is coming through there, and you know, we can see it's very, very specific. And you start thinking about how things might get deployed in course design. It's quite interesting. I just mention here that thinking about this type of data, so I always get asked the question, well, you know, what's postgraduate demand looking like for X or for Y? And what I'd say is, when you start getting this kind of data, you can be thinking about, well, where is, you know, these types of elements that you've got here, I know, international financial reporting standards, or VAT returns and things like that. Where do these feature in your programs, like looking at an undergraduate program? Is it something that is just a small element of one module, maybe early on in year one of a degree? You know, how much emphasis is actually put on that? How much development is done of that? And if you see something that actually is highly in demand, but is actually only a small feature of an undergraduate program, that actually might give an indication of where there is opportunity for additional focus, maybe at another level. It's not always going to be the case, and of course that needs to be in consultation with academics who kind of can take that and think of it as a pedagogical item and make that call. But you have data to suggest, look, there's something around this. Do we do more of it? Do we develop more, or could we take this out? Could it be a short course? Could it be a PG course? Could it be some kind of online provision, or something like that? So this kind of data can really start helping with those types of decisions. And you know, it might just be, you know what, this is something we could do more of because we can see that it's something we do. Or you think, you know what, we do this, but we don't really emphasize to students that this is important. You know, it's, for them, it's a small thing that we cover off. Actually, it's quite useful for them to know that that small thing, which for them, you know, they covered, tick that box, is really valuable in the labor market. So joining up those dots and using the data for this kind of thing. Anyway, so those are specialized skills. Let's then look at common skills. So common skills, these are these include transferable skills, soft skills. We call them common skills because these are the skills that we see commonly across multiple occupations. So it will cover slightly different things, but again, the way we structure everything we do is driven by data, not a kind of external framework of how we think the world should be. It's simply we look at how the world is and reflect that in the way we cluster things and group things together. So this is what we can see here, and we could see where things are coming through. Let's again take that through to another level. We can also take out the software skills. So not only are we able to look at hard skills, we can extract within that the software skills. And these it's important to be able to do that because these really change quite fast. So it's useful to be on top of them and understanding what software is important. So, you know, looking at QuickBooks versus Xero software, for example, in the world of finance, and understanding that. Now, if I know we've got a number of clients on this who are already users of our software. So if you use Analyst, you're thinking, hang on, I've not seen this before. This exists in the report builder report in job postings, in the job postings module, and you can kind of create your own report and select what packets of data, what charts that you want. And so from this, I've just been selecting what are the skills by category, subcategory, and then just skills themselves. And the skills chart has different tabs, so you can toggle between them. So it's all quite straightforward to pull off this data, and it takes about 20 seconds to get at this kind of data. So that is useful. So yeah, if you haven't found this in the tool yet, this is where you go to get it. But this is looking at an aggregation over a time period. And of course, what you could do is put this kind of data into a table, and you could track things over time, and you could look at it longitudinally. You could also compare snapshots in time. So think about the skills analytics side of it. So here, got the same group, the finance career area, but here, rather than looking at the aggregation between June 2019 and June 2022, I'm comparing June 2019 with June 2022, but I've also added another filter, which is looking at entry-level job postings. So those job postings that specify they're looking for people at 0 to 3 years experience. And so in this chart, what we're doing is looking at, well, what are the hottest skills, which are the most increased, comparing those two time periods, and what are the most decreased as well. So what has had the most decrease? So what is hot and what is cold, and that is useful. And of course, if what you might want to do is compare aggregations of, what's the past year or 2 years with the prior year or 2 years, and of course you can do all of that with the data, and you can extract it and work it through in any way that you want. So comparing changes, and then of course matching that to what is happening in delivery is important. And then thinking about flow as well. So this is looking at here. Yes, so here I've done, so the previous one I think was specialized skills. This one is looking same area, but looking at software skills. And we can see the change, the flow in demand for those over time. Now, again, being able to understand how that's reflected in what is taught is or developed or experienced by your students is going to be important. But the point is that this is the kind of thing that is quite easily obtainable. And so we can see this, what is obtainable, and that's great, I hope. But how do we get value from all of this? And then that is all in the deployment. So what do I mean by that? I mean, where the data sits, how the data is shared, how the insights from the data are actioned, are all critical to extracting value from the data. So if it's appended, so if these kinds of reports are kind of appended to a course review report as a kind of tick box exercise, frankly, what's the point? Which takes us back to the beginning of what I said in this session, which is, why are we doing this? And that's because there's an expectation from students that they will be more employable because of their time at your institution. And there's an expectation from employers that this will also be the case. Now, you know, that we all know there are all sorts of external factors driving us to think about about graduate outcomes, you know, GOS, proceed, rankings, funding, all sorts, and so on. But in the end, this is about the students. So where we've seen the most success when it comes to deployment is when the institutional leaders ensure that the different teams who have access to this kind of data are joined up in how it's used. So these teams, they all want to ask different questions of the data. They're all using it to different ends, but it's related. And if you're intentional about it, then an ecosystem is created, and that stretches from horizon scanning and portfolio planning to course reviews, course design and delivery, employability interventions, employer engagement, careers advice and guidance, and marketing and student recruitment. So all of that then comes together. So the data is useful, the data is accessible, the data is highly informative, that the insights really are massively granular, they can be tracked, they can be applied quite readily, but it's thinking about how you join that up in the institution where that value is really going to get to the students. So that is my urging to everyone who's thinking about using this data or already using this data, is think about, well, how do we ensure that the students benefit from these insights? I thought as well, so I'm kind of coming to the end. So before I just highlight a few things, are there any questions coming through? I don't think I can see in the chat. Are there any questions? You have a second to throw them in.
There's none in the box at the moment.
Yeah. But very happy to connect with people afterwards if they're kind of interested in the different approaches that people take to deployment, or put people in touch with each other, and certainly this is something I want to be talking more about and learning more about as well from our clients, and how they ensure that students, that the end beneficiaries, along with employers, benefit from these kinds of insights. But certainly any feedback we get from you would be great to tell those stories. In the meantime, do have a look at other things that we're doing. So I think it is Tuesday next week. I'm giving another webinar on planning, focusing on planning and thinking about place, priority and provision. This is a version of what I spoke at the HESPA conference a few weeks ago. So if you came to that, you'll notice it's similar, but it'd be great to see people there or colleagues. So do connect people into that. And also we have a forthcoming webinar about artificial intelligence in the labour market, and that's going to be really fascinating and I think highly relevant to our higher education audience. So do please sign up for that. So in the absence of questions, I will leave it there, but thank you very much for coming today. I hope those of you who already do have the tools have a look at using the Global Occupations Taxonomy career areas in the report builder to generate these types of reports, and using the hot and cold skills report as well. And for those of you who don't have access to our data and would like to have a play around with it, or be able to share some with colleagues, please do send me an email, richard.hewitt@lightcast.io, but you'll get a or at mzbg.com, that will still work as well. But my contact details, or our contact details, will be in the follow-up email. But do reach out, happy to share and you know, see whether this can be helpful to you. So thank you very much for coming today. I hope it was interesting, and look forward to catching up with you all offline. Thank you. Bye-bye.